So we'll be exploring today the relational values between people and nature, and we're going to be mostly doing this through some interactive questions and polling that it may challenge your views somewhat. And so could you please, I should have said earlier that we need a cell phone or a laptop or something, and I hope the internet plays ball because I think it's been a bit dodgy today. But if you could all please either scan the QR code or open menti.com and put in the code at the top of the screen so you can join my little polling thing, please. But the QR code is going to disappear now, but the code will stay up if you can't join right now. So this is a rather simple presentation, and it's not really very scientific, I would say. But my mum and I, thought it would be useful to learn more about our colleagues' views and relationships with nature, as this often impacts how we work together. We know that many other people have explored this topic, and probably even at previous GRIN meetings. But we thought it would be important to remind ourselves how we view nature, given the various topics of this meeting this time. So, firstly, has some people already skipped to there? Okay, I see it's not exactly linked, so maybe if you could just don't go through them all yet, just go as I go, please. What kind of picture comes to mind when you think of nature? And just put in a few words or one of the first thing that pops into your mind, and then we'll have a brief look. All right, so we've got some emotions even, which I wasn't expecting, which is quite nice. We've got animals, we've got colors, we've got some abiotic factors like water, we've got forest, birds, plants, wildlife, all things I think we might expect. I'm glad to see some abiotic features too. Has anyone said people? I don't see any yet, which is quite interesting. Has anyone said the gut bacteria living in our gut microbiomes? Do we consider that part of nature? All right, moving on. Think of a time when you experienced a strong emotional connection with another non-human species or place. What species or place or ecosystem was it? It must be something deep and meaningful, just beyond mild enjoyment. If you haven't had an experience, don't feel forced to add one. You can comment on a few species or entities. And think, is it possible for us to experience deep connections and relationships with non-human and abiotic entities? If you think not, then don't add anything. Very cool. 3 elephants. A mountain summit. Very cool. A bee. I love that. Oh, are we not seeing them all? Oh dear, we can't see them all. Sorry, not sure how to work that. Anyway, thank you. So Western thought has tended to feature a separation between people or self and nature. But many people have realized that this is a bit simplistic, that people's values around nature are more complicated and nuanced. This has been realized especially by studying the relationships of indigenous people with nature. Relational values has been introduced as a third category that is less either or. This speaks of people and nature, and people as part of nature. It's not meant to replace instrumental and intrinsic values, these categories, but to provide space for a bigger range of values from a bigger range of cultures or viewpoints. The Nature Futures Framework, I didn't put the source, sorry about that, was developed by IPBES as a heuristic approach that appreciates the diverse values of nature. It's been suggested as a tool for adaptive decision-making on particular issues and to make people's different values quite explicit. And where would you put your own personal values with nature on this IP-based diagram. You can just, as I see some people have already figured out, just tap on the diagram. Do you value nature for itself, independent of what it does for you, which would mean you're more in the intrinsic section, intrinsic category, or because of your personal or cultural relationship with it, the relational category, or because of the support it provides, like ecosystem services and natural resources, which would put you more by the instrumental category, or a combination. We think it's all well and good to see what range of values is represented, but how do we navigate between them when they clash? Most serious conflicts involve a clash of values. So now for a few provocative questions to get you thinking about some of these conflicts and the assumptions that underlie them. Well, let's see what we've got around there. Some right in the middle, more relational, few intrinsic, none purely instrumental, well, sort of, in that circle, but more towards the middle. Quite interesting. 14 right in the middle. Oh, okay. All right. If you had to choose between harming a non-endangered species or a critically endangered species, which would you choose? Not that you'd want to harm any species, I would hope, but if you had to. I'll give you a few seconds. All right, looking like we're all, pardon? The none option. Oh, yeah. Should have added it, but this is in a no choice option. All right. If you had to choose between saving a human or a critically endangered non-human, which would you choose? If you want neither, you could just refrain from voting, I suppose. Interesting. Very cool, very cool to see some various views. Mostly the endangered non-human, mostly the human, and a few the endangered non-human. A few the endangered non-human. All right, moving on. Oh, some have answered, that's okay. Now for a potentially fairly controversial one. If reducing the human population on Earth would improve the quality of life of everyone and safeguard biodiversity, do you think it should be considered? Sure. All right, it's about a 70-30 split. Very interesting. Would it be acceptable in your mind to follow exploitative labor practices if the result was a dramatic boost to the economy? Okay, not too surprisingly, I would say, but some surprises. Or not. That's part of the point. Do you consider it acceptable to exploit animals when the result is a boost to the economy or advantage to humans? For example, by confining them to small cages or breeding them for rapid growth? All right, I'm running slightly out of time, but we've got a rough pattern. Which statement best describes how you see humans compared to non-humans? This affects the nature of our potential relationship with non-humans, whether we always see ourselves as the more powerful partner or not. Would we be prepared to extend the moral frameworks that guide our relationships with humans to non-humans? For example, would we perhaps consider a declaration of non-human rights All right, seems the most is all species are equal but different. And then the second highest, the pink one. And then this is the last question, which I wish you could have a bit more time for because it's a bit of reading. But so I think this is perhaps the most informative question for understanding more about our colleagues' relationships with nature. And could you please rank these statements on the treatment of non-human species from the most to least important for you? Okay, clear winner so far is their degree of consciousness informs how you treat non-human animals or non-human entities. Threat status, changing up, capacity to suffer. Seems a consistent least important is the ability to relate to humans. And the importance to humans is fourth. Okay, very, very cool. Sorry, we have to move on, unfortunately. So just some final thoughts. Humans have the capacity to form deep and meaningful relationships with non-human species and with nature. If we delve into what lies behind these relationships, we find a range of values, from intrinsic to instrumental to relational, and combinations of these three categories. We also find potential conflicts between how we treat and relate to humans and how we treat or relate to non-humans. And I think that our relationships with nature cannot be one-sided. They can't only be about the benefits we get from the relationship. What does the non-human partner get from us? What does nature get from us? And think about that relationship you mentioned in the second question, if you did, and what does or did the non-human partner in that relationship get from you? Thank you very much, and if anything has challenged you today or made you think about things in a bit of a different way, I encourage you to think about it more on the walks, on the excursions, and talk about it with your friends or your colleagues.